dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policymaking upang bigyan diin ang kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERP-P is here for you. SERP-P is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERP-P, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERP-P widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERP-P has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERP-P has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERP-P provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERP-P, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERP-P has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERP-P now. Socioeconomic research portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan muna gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policymaking upang bigyan diin ang kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERP-P is here for you. SERP-P is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERP-P, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERP-P widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERP-P has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERP-P has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERP-P provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERP-P, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERP-P has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERP-P now. Socioeconomic research portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
test 1, 2. Hi, hello, good morning everyone. We'll be starting at 9:10 a.m. So kindly settle down na lang po before we start. And we would also like to notify everyone na if may bakante pong upuan, occupy natin yung mga front seats po. Okay, thank you. So magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Good morning everyone. Welcome to the Knowledge Sharing Forum organized by the PIDS and the Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, or SERP-P. I am Janina Sarmiento, PIDS Information Officer, and I will be your host for today. This forum marks the 9th installment of SERP-P's seminar series. In observance of Women's Month, we will be hearing from researchers and experts who will share their studies and insights on key areas of women's empowerment and gender equality in the Philippines. This forum was made possible with the support of the 69 partner institutions of SERP-P, bonded by a shared passion for research, knowledge, and exchange. SERP-P is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic research. It brings together currently up to 10,000 publications from academic institutions, government agencies, and international organizations. This event is part of SERP-P's initiatives to support partner institutions in sharing their research and fostering stronger research networks and to promote the spirit of open access research. With everyone's participation today, whether you are online or on-site, we hope to facilitate a meaningful dialogue and inspire broader conversations about research, policy, and action needed to address challenges in women's empowerment and in closing the gender gap in the Philippines. To give an overview of today's event and share his support, here is PIDS President Dr. Dr. Aniceto Orbeta Jr.
Those on Zoom and those watching via the PIDS and SERP-P Facebook pages. Welcome to the 9th installment of our SERP-P Knowledge Sharing Series, Empowering Women and Closing the Gender Gap in the Philippines. I would also like to warmly welcome our diverse participants, representatives from government, academia, private sector, civil society, and media who are virtually present today. This event is brought to you by the Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, or SERP-P, an initiative of PIDS. SERP-P serves as the country's first online repository of socioeconomic knowledge resources and has grown into a network of 68 partner organizations committed to advancing knowledge generation and promoting open access to public policy research. Today's forum is an opportunity to shed light on the persistent challenges women face, from unpaid work and limited political participation to restricted access to reproductive health care, especially during disasters. With insights from our esteemed SERP-P Network presenters, we will explore these pressing issues and reflect on how we can collectively work toward closing the gender gap in our country. Women have always played a vital role in shaping Philippine society, leaving their mark in our country's history, economy, and politics. Despite this contribution, the gender gap remains wide. Philippines dropped from 16th to the 25th place in the 2024 Global Gender Gap Index by the World Economic Forum. The key factor in the decline is the women's economic participation, which fell to 77.5%, or a 1.4 percentage points decrease from the previous year. Another glaring issue is this disconnect between education and employment. According to a PIDS study in 2019, even though girls often receive better education than boys, this does not translate into higher workforce participation. Philippine Statistics Authority reported in 2023 that the country's workforce is still predominantly male, a 60-40 split, despite more women in the labor force holding college degrees for many years now. Children's childcare duties and social expectations continue to limit Filipino women's work participation. The World Bank found that being married and having young children can reduce women's chances in joining the labor market by 7 to 14 percentage points. Married women, particularly those ages 25 to 39, who juggle peak reproductive years with greater household responsibilities, are less likely to hold paid jobs and are more engaged in non-wage work than single women and men. Parents, especially mothers, also find it hard to work outside home as affordable childcare options are scarce, forcing many women, especially those of low-income families, to leave their jobs due to lack of support systems. Yet, Filipinas continue to show resilience in civic participation. Data from the Commission on Elections shows that from 2016 to 2022, nearly half of registered voters were women, with a high 75% consistently showing up at the polls from 2010 to 2022. However, political representation remains low. While more women are running for office, only 1 in 5 candidates is a woman. Gender gap in political decision-making has stalled at 46%, reinforcing the country's declining global gender ranking in 2024. Another critical but often overlooked issue is family planning, as essential human right that empowers individuals, especially women, to make informed decisions about their reproductive health. However, many still face barriers such as social stigma, lack of knowledge, and limited access to healthcare. These challenges are even more severe during disasters when healthcare systems are often disrupted. In times of crisis, women, especially those in conflict-affected areas and marginalized communities, face heightened vulnerabilities. Disasters can cut off access to family planning services, leaving women and their partners without essential resources, which can lead to unintended consequences and further burden families facing hardship. Ensuring continuous access to family planning, even in times of crisis, is vital for protecting women's health, rights, and well-being and their communities. What can we do to address these issues? That is precisely what today's forum is about. Our esteemed speakers will shed light on these challenges and offer evidence-based insights. First, PIDS Senior Research Fellow Dr. CONNIE BAYUDAN-DACUYCUY will discuss the importance of unpaid work and why it should be valued. Following her, Dr. Jean ENCINAS-FRANCO, a professor at the University of the Philippines Department of Political Science, will examine the barriers to women's political participation. Lastly, Dr. CARMEN PEÑALOSA, Executive Director at Miriam College Center for Strategic Research, Creativity, and Intellectual Property, will explore family planning access in disaster-affected areas. As I conclude my opening remarks, I call on policymakers to translate our shared commitment into concrete action. Every Juana, regardless of her background or chosen path, deserves fairness and equal opportunities and meaningful support. Our policies must not only empower women, but also actively dismantle the barriers that continue to limit their participation and potential. Closing the gender gap is not just a conversation every March. It requires constant effort and commitment. We have made progress, but there's still a long way to go. At SERP-P, we believe that knowledge fuels change. By making research accessible and fostering informed discussion like this, we contribute to evidence-based policies that drive meaningful impact. Thank you, everyone, for being here for this important forum.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Orbeta, for sharing why we're supporting this forum as the government socioeconomic think tank and highlighting critical issues that while often raising more questions and frustrations than answers, are nonetheless essential to examine, particularly in shaping and informing effective policymaking. Before we dive into the presentations, we would love to first gauge our audience's perspectives on today's topic to also set the stage for today's discussion. So we will be holding a poll. We will flash the question right now, and then you can answer through the Mentimeter link QR code, or also through the link that should be available on your comment section if you're watching through Facebook, or in the chat box session if you're watching through Zoom. So our poll question for today is, what do you think should be the top priority for the next Congress in advancing women's empowerment and gender equality? So we have three options, and we are aware that these are limited compared to the many possible answers that we could have. But for now, these are our options, no? We have sexual and reproductive health and rights, women's economic opportunities, and women's role in decision policymaking. Again, the question, feel free to answer using the link or the QR code. What do you think should be the top priority for the next Congress in advancing women's empowerment and gender equality? Now, again, these are limited options, and we would like also to emphasize that priority naman po tayo itong lahat, no? So, yun lang. Let's not forget as well na women's empowerment and gender equality is a really broad call, no? So there are many areas that we can work on, and these are only a few options, and all of them are priorities naman talaga, no? So we can now flash the answers, no? Just a quick poll, so we can gauge everyone's perspectives today on ano nga ba, no? Or saan tayo nagsisimula, or ano yung gusto pa nating makita for the next Congress. Wait lang po natin, no, as we flash on the screen. So feel free to check, no? We welcome all answers on site and online. The link should be available. Again, if you're watching through Facebook, sa comment section, and if you're watching through Zoom, it should be available in the chat box. So ayan, let's just wait for a bit. Okay, so, my gosh, okay. Halos ano, no? The top answer right now is on sexual and reproductive health and rights, followed by women's economic opportunities, and last ay on women's role in decision policy making. So yan, we appreciate your engagement, and also again, we encourage everyone to continue sharing your thoughts as we explore these important issues throughout the forum. Without further ado, I will now introduce the first presenter. Okay? So she is a senior research fellow at PIDS. She holds a PhD in economics from Kyoto University in Japan. Her research interests include household, family, and gender issues, poverty analysis, and applied economic modeling. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. CONNIE BAYUDAN-DACUYCUY. Good morning, ma'am.
Hello? Ayan. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for joining us today online and on site. That's the first thing that I'd like to say. Second is I'd like to say thank you to RID for being patient with us, because it took us a long time before we say no, before we agreed to doing this, because the basis of this presentation was written a long time ago. If I'm not mistaken, around 2020, around 2020. So that's a little bit dated, and I was having reservation because the data that we've used there might, or the patterns that we've identified there might no longer be applicable to the current setting. So it took us a little bit of time to figure out whether we're going to say yes or no. But nevertheless, we're here, so we were able to figure out that the patterns that we've observed 5 years ago still hold in the current setting. And then third, so the third is my presentation. The basis of my presentation would be the policy note, which is very short, so it will not take me a long time to elaborate what I wanted to say. So my presentation would be on how and why we should value housework. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a brief outline of the presentation. I'll be talking about how housework is divided inside the home, and then who are the individuals that are involved in housework, and the more importantly, why we should value housework, and then we will be offering some ways forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so just some sort of just to lay down some motivation and definition in order for me to so that we will understand what I'm trying to say later. Sorry. What is housework? So housework, it goes by many names. It depends on whose perspective we're taking from. For example, if we are talking about economics, or when we're talking with economists, then housework is probably going to be referred to as home production or non-market work. But when we're talking of, for example, with feminist economists, then it would be called unpaid work. And then if we are talking with Marxist economists, then they will be referring to housework as reproductive roles. So there are many names. Housework has many names. But for my presentation today, what I will be talking about when I say housework, it includes both care economy, meaning caregiving for care work, caregiving, elderly care, child care. It also includes preparation, the things that we usually do at home. Yung mas kilala natin na housework, like for example, preparation of meals, washing clothes, cooking, house cleaning, and things like that. So next slide, please. So that's housework. When I'm talking of housework, I refer to all these things: care economy and the usual housework. So in terms of who is working, or how do we determine the division of housework in the household? Again, there are many strands of literature, and the popular literature would be those of economists like Becker. He was saying that housework is divided because of the role of comparative advantage and efficiency. So when we say comparative advantage, it means that people do what they do best. So if you are good at doing non-market work, then you do it. If you're good at doing market work, then you do it. And then corollary to that would be the specialization thing. A specialization in the sense that the spouse that commands the higher market price will, of course, go to the marketplace, and those that are not going to fetch a higher price will perhaps cut back and then do the housework. So something like that, specialization. And then there's also the role of biological differences, because housework usually meron siyang sort of gender roles, in the sense that light work are associated with women's work, and then yung mga heavy lifting will be associated with men's work. And then there's also the result of social construct, and ito yung mga parang more on the feminist economist already, where housework is assigned to men and women to preserve the dominance of men over women. So ito yung medyo a little bit controversial, but perhaps this is true in patriarchal society, societies that are dominated by men, then and now. So even now, like for example, most of our East Asian neighbors, like Japan and Korea, they are more on the side of the patriarchal dominance. And there are so many common considerations when we talk of housework. Financial returns, again, comparative advantage, specialization, personal preferences even. So there are women who would choose to cut back on work or not work at all because that's what they wanted. And then gender roles and social norms. So having said all these, it appears that housework and who performs it are determined inside the household, no? It's an intra-household issue. And so the question, but it's something like the same as the issue of which school will I send my child to. So it's an intra-household issue, and so you will think that there's no how do we connect this with policy? So why should we accommodate housework issues in a policy space when in fact it is something that is decided within the household? So parang dapat walang pakialam ang government dyan because that is an intra-household issue at best. So the burning question is why do we need to accommodate housework issues in a policy space? And in a while, I will be discussing this, the answer hopefully to this. But first, in the next slide, I will be, next slide. I just wanted to say a little bit on the individuals who are involved in housework. So both men and women perform care and domestic work. That is found in many studies, but women typically outperform men in terms of hours. So that's also a finding of the UN Women, and that's also something that is a finding of many studies locally. So both men and women perform care and domestic work, but women perform more. So ibig sabihin, they do more in terms of hours. And then grandparents also take care of children. So there is this 2018 longitudinal study of aging and health in the Philippines. 25% of persons greater than or equal to 60 or the senior citizens are involved in caring for grandchildren. So and so what is there are also studies that says that co-residents with grandparents have benefits in terms of child rearing. So precisely because you have support, mothers can still they still feel comfortable going to work, knowing that there are grandparents who are taking care of the kids while they are gone. So next slide, please. Okay, so here in this slide, we looked at the labor force survey July round for various years. The sample for this would be those that are not seeking work. And the color that so there are many colors there, but the color that we are interested in would be the green. So you will see that, so we looked at the marital status and the gender. So you can see the green varies in terms of length. So single and we compared single male head versus single female head, and then married male head versus married female head. And you will see that the green the length of the green bars varies rather. And the findings would be, our takeaway here would be both men and women, they both indicated doing housework as a reason for not looking for work, but rather there's gender disparity. Single female head, they are a lot of single female head are indicated that the housework as a reason, but more so for married female head or spouse. So you can see that there is a gender disparity in terms of the reasons for not looking for work. So in the next slide, okay. So here we are going to talk about now why it is significant for us to value housework. So when we talk of housework, we usually don't think beyond housework. So what I'm trying to say is that we only think of housework for its short-term benefits, which is localized. So for example, what do I mean by that? When we cook our foods because we don't want to go hungry. We wash our clothes because we don't want to be smelly. We wash the dishes because we don't want roaches infestation. But we don't go beyond that. But we have to remember that home where care work is taking place is a learning institution. So this is where we learn our ABCs, our first ABCs. This is where we learn our 1, 2, 3s. And even if children have already gone to school, home is still a partner of educational institutions. So from the moment that we prepared foods for the kids to the time that we are helping them in doing the homework. The home is a partner of educational institutions. And so what I'm trying to say here is that it's not a stretch of imagination when I say that housework contributes to the society by nurturing our future workforce, by nurturing healthy citizens, future leaders, so things like that. But there are contrasting realities for women, especially. Some women, as I have said, they choose not to work. They choose unpaid work. They choose to do housework. That is okay. That is their choice. But there are others who do not have a choice. That role was assigned to them. That means that they have no choice at all. They just, so the option is either somebody has to take care of the kids, or so they have to exit the labor market or stop participating. Okay, so there are two contrasting realities. In the next slide, I just wanted to share here that housework is really important, and it has really critical implications, and these implications are felt already by our East Asian neighbors. What do I mean by that? So Japan and South Korea, they have one of the lowest in terms of fertility rate. South Korea is 0.8, Japan is 1.3. Those rates are very low compared to the replacement rate, or the rate at which you will maintain your existing population rate. And then that is also lower than the global average, which is 2.3. 2.3 children born per woman. So mababa talaga yun. And there are expert studies that connected why this is the case. Like, for example, there's an IMF study that says that women in Japan are doing 5 times more unpaid work than men. And the survey also says that more than half of the women preferred fewer children because they associate another children with more housework. So there is this connection between the dwindling population and the women's desire to have more children because of the housework that's associated with bringing one more kid into the world. And so what I'm trying to say here is that housework really has critical implications. One is for these countries that have dwindling population, what will happen to their social security system? Who's going to pay for the insurance of the old when there are no more young people? Kasi that's how it goes, diba? When you have social, ang typical na model kasi ng social security system, the young pays for the old. If the young population is already dwindling, then we are going to have a problem sustaining the payment of the insurance of the old generation. And then national security, that's also a critical issue. Why? Paano kung matanda na, diba? So who's going to defend the country if the population is really old? So those kinds of issues. So it has far-reaching, housework has far-reaching effect, but some of us do not typically think far ahead in terms of housework. So in Japan and South Korea, they're already taking steps to encourage childbirth. In South Korea, there are 3 policy areas that they're looking into: policies on work and family balance, childcare, and housing. Japan is also they also have this policies on providing national subsidies for child rearing, and then greater access to quality childcare services. So in the Philippines, just wanted to say that we are also mababa rin. We also have a low fertility rate already. It's 1.9, lower than the replacement rate, and also lower than the global average. 1.9, pero hindi naman kasing baba. Not as low as those of Japan and South Korea. So we are we are declining, and I think there's a projection that in 2045 we are going to become an aging population. So in a way, there's a declining need for childcare, but then again, there's going to be an increasing need for the elderly care, no? So it's a little bit of balance in terms of what kinds of policies are we going to put forth given the demographic trends. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, still on the valuing housework and the significance, implications for human capital accumulation, and this is true for women who are exiting the labor market. So, for example, interruptions in market work, no, and then women are mostly going to be affected by this because they are the ones who are going to spend time, most often, no, hindi ko naman sinasabi that fathers do not participate in child rearing and child nurturing, but mostly kasi, yun na, sa gender roles, it's the women who are spending more time nurturing the children, etc., etc. And so the idea is that firms may view the provision of training to these women as a risky investment. Risky investment in the sense that if the firms know that they are going to there's a possibility for these women to get out of the to have an exit option, then they will not be given perhaps an equal chance of having the training. And if they don't have the training, then there's a less chance for them to advance in the career ladder. And then there's also the implication for wage and work hours. Becker in the past, they already coined terms like wage premium for married men. Wage premium, ibig sabihin, when you are married, you have higher wages. So wage premium, it occurs for men. And the idea is that if you are married, perhaps there are psychic benefits to being married, to having family, to having kids, to having a home. And then there's also this motherhood penalty that says that mothers or married women, they have a lower wage compared to the single female's wage. And that was a long time ago. These findings were already these terms were already coined a long time ago. And we looked at the LFS July round, just a simple tabulation, and we found that this is still the case. There's still marriage, there's still motherhood penalty, and there's still wage premium. And so, like for example, wage premium, 45 married men earn 45 pesos daily wage higher than the single men. And then motherhood penalty, married females are earning 30 pesos lower than their counterparts. So long time ago, nandyan na siya, nandito pa rin siya hanggang ngayon. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so how should we value housework? There are, before there are, what do you call this, parang mga polisiyan that's being forwarded in terms of, okay, we have to pay housework, we have to pay people who are doing housework. And that was already forwarded in the 1970s pa. However, this advocacy did not gain traction because there's a lack of consensus on how exactly are you going to provide wage. Paano mo siya i-value? How are you going to value the amount of work that is being done in the household? And there are challenges. And there are challenges in the sense that, again, typical wage is lower. And then second is that this is just a temporary solution. It's not a long-term empowerment. What we wanted is for women and men to be both empowered. Giving wages does not address gender equality, or it does not provide economic independence. So next slide, please. And so, having said all these, we came up with different ways forward. And then the ways forward that we are sharing with you today would be to craft policies and programs that will empower women, both men and women actually, and help them to perform both their market and non-market work. Kasi men and women naman dito sa atin are doing both market and non-market work. There's no doubt about it. So this is not only for women, but also for men. So the first thing that we are saying here is that we need to broaden opportunities for both men and women who exit the labor market through enhanced work from home opportunities. So, for example, DTI can strengthen their training, the provision of training to micro and small enterprises, and then help the micro and small enterprises by enhancing their visibility in local markets. And then DICT, currently they have this Spark, strengthening the Philippine workforce through adaptive and responsive digital knowledge. It is a program that was formerly called Digital Jobs PH. So this is a program that provides training for online work and then community outsourcing. And so they renamed it perhaps from Digital Jobs PH to Spark, perhaps to make it, to scale it more. But it can benefit, I think, from a process and outcome evaluation so that they can really target the kinds of programs that are needed on the ground. And then the second ways forward that we're offering here is that to improve the public services that have direct and indirect consequences on housework. What do we mean by that? Quality childcare. We need to ensure highly compensated and better trained childcare workers. That's one. Lower children teacher ratio. And then longer contact hours. This is one problem with the daycare community services that we have. So sometimes morning or afternoon lang, no? But the problem is there is a timing issue because we have to go from 8 to 5. So who's going to take care of the kids after the morning session has been done? So that is something that we perhaps, I don't know, policymakers can look into in terms of trying to lengthening the contact hours in childcare services. And another public services that have, but this time indirect consequences would be the reliability of mass transportation. Less time on the road, more time to rest, pursue wellness, perform housework, etc. And then the affordability of internet services. So we're already have a lot of jobs available online through digital platforms. Unfortunately, the Philippines still has the costliest internet services in the ASEAN region. I think, based on research by PIDS, it costs around 2,000 pesos per month. So perhaps there's a role for policy on this one. Next slide, please. Achieve work-life balance. So perhaps more legislations are needed in terms of work from home arrangements and flexi time. So PIDS is already doing this because we have this 4-day work week and we have work from home arrangement. But again, this is something that that is not yet prevalent in the public sector. And then strengthen information campaigns on housework. So awareness, just raising awareness on what housework is, and its broader implication. So forum like this, very important. Research as well, infographics. If you have social media, advocate for things that will improve how we treat housework rather. And then lastly, again, as I have said, we are moving, we have demographic changes, so we have to prepare for aging population because the increase in caregiving demands can lead to lower labor productivity, like for example, absenteeism, tardiness. So we don't want that to happen. So perhaps we can explore community-based elderly home. I know that this is a little bit because we have a stronger sense of filial piety, filial obligation. So medyo ano to, medyo a little bit controversial. But I was listening earlier. We have this video that the PIDS plays in to fill the gap between the registration and the beginning of the program that says, pag polisiya ay pinag-isipan, aasenso ang bayan, susulong ang bayan, something like that. So what I'm just trying to say here is that we can perhaps look into this, exploring community-based elderly home, and then look into the design, and then see how things will fit into our sensibilities and into our culture. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Opinionated, we often, whether she's a politician or not, whether she's in a private firm or not, we often refer to her, oh, she has balls. I don't know if you've encountered this term or this sentence about women. And whenever I hear that, I cringe, mainly because even if women have had significant strides in terms of political participation, relatively speaking, to say or to compare a woman's strength with man's anatomy tells us that the measure through which we attribute strength is still that of a man's anatomy, no? So, and that tells you that we have a long way to go. Okay? So, yeah, this research is something that Dr. Elma Laguna, the current director of the UP Population Institute, we did this together back in, I think, 2021. And we're actually updating it. Later, I'll tell you more about what we're going to do. So, yeah. Can we proceed, please? Next slide. Yeah. I think we've all been bombarded with the thought that why are there very few women in politics? Whenever we encounter or whenever we see, for instance, on CNN, global meetings, G8 summits or ASEAN meetings, and they have their picture taken, we always see one or two women. Huh? And it's something that are already in our collective consciousness. Whenever, for instance, the Senate or the House of Representatives take their pictures and we see them on TV or on social media posts, we still, I mean, if you're conscious of it, definitely there are still fewer women. But then we've come a long way. I mean, relatively speaking. But then the sad part is that whenever there is a sauna and there are pictures of women, we often refer to the clothes they wear, no? rather than what they have to say about the SONA. So these are things that may seem trivial, but these are part of our everyday lives that sort of shapes how we look at and perceive women in politics. There is the discussion that I'm going to narrate today is actually about the case for women's inclusion in formal politics. I'd like to first deal with why women should matter in politics, and then the Philippine context, and then I move forward with what are the challenges or barriers to women's entry to formal politics and ways forward. Okay, next. So, why should women participate in politics? There are various reasons that women ascribed or discussed by people who study women's participation in politics. One is that democratic imperative, meaning if you call yourself a democracy, if a country calls itself democracy, especially in the Philippine context, we are Asia's first democracy, then we necessarily have to abide by the term, and if women comprise half the population, then they should be represented in decision-making bodies. No, so that's the democratic imperative. Next would be the development outcomes. Studies indicate, these are various studies, no? This is not just one, no? Indicate, and these are studies from different countries all over the world, indicate that when women have some sort of a critical mass or are in formal politics, they tend to advocate or create programs and policies that have to do with social welfare. Policies that are would accrue to development outcomes. And they normally, for instance, when they deal with the government budget, they normally put in more allocation for those that have to do with social welfare. So that's the second imperative on why women should be in formal politics. Third is for its symbolic value, no? Meaning to say, when a young woman or a girl sees women in leadership positions, they tend to aspire, no? They tend to model their goals in life vis-a-vis what they see on TV screens, what they see in the country's political life. I don't know if you remember the famous picture of Kamala Harris, in which there was a young girl, African-American girl, looking at her when she was nominated as the Democratic Party candidate back in the last year, no, during the 2024 Democratic Conventions. And that's something that will eventually bode well for societal outcomes, no? Because as we said, women have their rightful place in formal politics. When I say formal politics, normally it refers to electoral politics. Okay? Next. The fourth imperative would be women in decision-making. More women in decision-making is part of our normative commitments to international human rights instruments. For instance, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or the CEDAW, which has been localized by the Magna Carta of Women in 2009. in which there are provisions mandating that at least that women should at least form 50% of decision making in all spheres of government. And then, of course, the SDGs, no? We before SDGs, we have the MDGs, and now SDGs. We are very gung-ho about it. NEDA has been implementing that, programs and advocating to other government agencies that we should at least try our very best to abide by the standards set by the SDGs, and of course the 1987 Constitution. Why is the 1987 Constitution important? Because the 1987 Constitution actually, unlike other constitutions, emphasize the role of women in nation building. Why is this the case? Why is our Constitution very specific? Because when our Constitution was drafted, we have already signed on the CEDAW and previous human rights instruments that sort of shaped some provisions of the 1987 Constitution. Secondly, a lot of women activists were part of the struggle against the Marcos Sr. dictatorship, such that when we redemocratized back in 1986, their demands had to be accommodated, mainly because when they were fighting the Marcos dictatorship in the 70s and early 80s, they were already demanding gender equality. But then what happened was that their male comrades, and these are the stories, said that let us first focus on the ouster of Marcos. Then when Marcos is gone, then Marcos Sr., then we can deal with gender equality. That is why the 1987 Constitution is important. And from then on, a lot of laws based on this provision of the 1987 Constitution have actually been realized, legislated because of the certain provisions on gender equality and women empowerment in the 1987 Constitution. Next. Okay, when we refer to women representation, I think normally we refer to data generated by COMELEC, but then I don't know when COMELEC started their database, but then I found this on the IPU, Interparliamentary Union, which monitors how many women there are in parliaments all over the world. And if you notice, in 1990, 3 years after we redemocratized, there were only 9% women in our Congress. The reason why parliament is used because we are among the few countries in the world which uses the term Congress, because we borrowed it from the American political system. So the generic term is usually parliaments, no? So 9% in 1990. In 27, it was already 30%. I'd have to tell you that the standard, the international standard set by the United Nations is that women should at least comprise, hindi nga 50% 30%, no? Of elected leaders to be able to make a difference, to overcome the dominance of men so that they are able to make a difference in terms of policies. They have to form this critical mass, 30% lang. And in 2017, we've sort of reached that, no? Next. Okay, in the 2022 elections, however, we sort of regressed a bit. So these are what came out, no? In the Sangguniang Panglungsod and Bayan, for instance, 76% pa din yung male and 24% female vice mayors. So it's almost 70 to 80%. And then 20% plus yung female, no? So very few women, no, elected officials. And that's something that we still really have to work out, no? Even if relatively speaking, we've come a long way nga, kasi 9% lang nung 1990. Next. So why is it, I mean, even if we have women in politics, there are, characteristics attributed to women elected in politics. Number one is that they are dynastic, meaning to say most women who are in politics right now are members of political dynasties. Meaning to say families who have been there for several years holding public offices, sometimes simultaneously in one electoral cycle. No? Why is it that this is something that I have to tell you? Why is it that I have to define it as a key feature of our of women's participation in politics? Because it tends to dilutes the agency of women to enter politics. No, if you, for instance, conceive of political families as patriarchal, no, it means that it's not their joint politics, not of their own volition, but because the family patriarch must have told them to do so. And so the common perception is that they are bench warmers, meaning they're there just to sit out the term of somebody else. Normally, the man, no, the father or the brother, no. Then it tells you, or it sort of informs or shapes public perception of women in politics as something that is not serious. Meaning they're serious. They're just there to act as bench warmers, no? But in my own study, these are qualitative studies, I have talked and I have examined some proposed bills and the sort of life histories of women from political dynasties who are part of dynasties, but then they've exhibited progressive ideas that may not necessarily be a stereotypical behavior of somebody from political dynasty. So what I'm saying is that some are bench warmers, but not all. Okay? There is also a study in using data from 2013 elections, municipal elections, indicating that women who are members of political dynasties are 240% more likely to win. And that tells you that why there are more women in our politics as a result of political dynasties. No? When women are relegated to committees, they tend to reify women's traditional roles. Meaning to say, wala namang masama, but meaning to say, pero they're usually relegated to committee on what do you call this? Women and family relations, committee on social welfare, committee on education. But rarely do you see, for instance, women who are advocating or who sit in the defense committee as chair. Foreign relations before, there were some like Miriam Defensor Santiago and Lauren Legarda for quite some time. But then that practically, That's the norm. Why? Because the leadership of both chambers are normally ascribed to men, and also the leadership of both chambers are normally chosen, especially yung committees, via seniority. No? And that means, sino ang senior? Di ba? Normally, the men. No? They're the gatekeepers, so to speak, of in appointing officials of each chamber. Next. The gender gap in terms of participation of women in politics indicates or estimates that to be able to close the gender gap, the World Economic Forum says it may take 95 years. And for parliaments alone, 48 years. So it means to say that we are not alone in having this problem. In fact, the United States has not even reached, I think, 30%. But Rwanda has, in fact, I think, reached 50%. At one point, they were 48%. Because I think the UN practically did the constitution of Rwanda. No? Okay, next. So why, in our context, why are there very few women in politics? In fact, no, the data of COMELEC, not only are there very few women seated in both houses of Congress, in local government units, there are also very few women who are candidates during elections. In 2019, there were 19 point something % women who were candidates in the elections. In 2022, there were 20+% women who filed their candidacies. Can you imagine? So ibig sabihin, sa 10 kandidato, 2 lang ang babae. Bakit? Bakit kaya? I attribute it to having weak political parties. If we have weak political parties, we cannot even begin to think about increasing the political participation of women. In most mature democracies where they have strong political parties, it's easier to sort of address compliance to certain gender quotas, to increasing the participation of women, because you have political parties as gatekeepers. You cannot do that if your gatekeepers are political dynasties. Okay? When I say weak political parties, that's also the perception of political parties in other parts of the world. But then in their context, you cannot just wake up, establish a political party, and run for election the next day. It means, like for instance, Donald Trump had to be nominated by the Republican Party, even if he is already Donald Trump. That is how strong their parties are, no? Because a third party candidate is even unthinkable, no? Pero in their constitution, there's no such thing as a provision that says the United States will have a two-party system. Wala. It just evolved, no? It just evolved as part of their political history and nation-building process, no? The second barrier to the entry of women in politics would be traditional norms, meaning to say that you know, in the discussions in the 1935 during the 1935 Constitutional Convention, you would be surprised that some of the discourses that were part of the discussion of the members of the 1935 Constitutional Convention are still resonate, no? Nowadays. Like for instance, why will we give women the right to vote when politics is dirty? Why will we provide women the right to vote when they take care of our children, then our children might actually be delinquents because they can no longer take care of our children if they participate in political life. So yeah, but then luckily, what the convention states is that the Philippine Congress should legislate suffrage, but then the condition is that there has to be 300% women who should be 300 more than 300,000 women who should vote for the right to suffrage. And lo and behold, more than 400,000 women voted that we should have a rightful place in politics. No? Third would be electoral system, meaning first past the post. In countries where there are more women in politics, they actually practice the proportional representation system, in which the party is more important than the personality behind it. Parang siya yung although bastardized na yung party list natin, parang siya yung political, parang katulad ng party list, no? In which they have gender quotas na sasabihin either political parties would have at least filled in at least 30%, otherwise they'd be disqualified, or there are reserved seats for women in parliaments. And then the masculinist and male-centric nature of politics, no? You know, we've been bombarded for the past years about violence against women in politics, harassment, fake news, using deep fakes, and these are all masculinist and male-centric behaviors, no? That bars women from entry or discourages women from entering politics. Funding, we all know that we need funding, no? And normally the funding mechanism is with men, no? And of course, gender disinformation. This has become a recent trend, and this is not only this does not only happen in the Philippines but also around the world. Next. Okay, ways forward. Of course, we need to strengthen political parties, and along with that, there have to be quota and incentives for gender funding of political parties so that they will be incentivized to have more women in their candidate slate. The party list law cannot continue. It has become a joke. So if it is amended, there has to be a zebra type list in which the nominee should be women, men, women, men. Ganon yung so that there's equity. We're not saying that we want more men in politics, but we have to provide equity measures to equalize, not to give women the chance because they are so much disadvantaged in political life. I feel very strong about this third recommendation, enact a law on violence against women, including disinformation. And I'm very happy that just recently the COMELEC has issued a resolution punishing candidates who will engage in sexist and homophobic slurs, no? In referring to their to their opponents, no? That's a very good step in the right direction. I also think that the COMELEC should be strengthened. We have to also think about the fact that the COMELEC has limited budget, limited resources, limited staff, and they have to take care of a synchronized election in a country with how many voters? 60 plus million voters. So it's not an easy task. They also have to be trained in gender and politics, no? Yeah. And then, of course, we should review legislative rules so they are more friendly to women. They should be gender fair and gender sensitive. Next. Yun na. Maraming salamat. And that note, thank you to PIDS for this opportunity.
Thank you rin po, Dr. Jean, for that very interesting presentation. We've seen yung mga challenges natin when it comes to just this political representation, and there are a lot more areas of women's empowerment and gender equality that we have to consider if we check kanina kung paano natin parang mas maisasara pa yung gender gap in the Philippines. And as Dr. Jean kanina mentioned, our performance, kahit na medyo challenging, compared to other countries, relatively okay siya. But then again, also, we have to look into the quality of participation of women when we want them to enter into politics as well. So it's very telling of where we are right now and how much work should be done. But anyway, I'll proceed now to introduce our last presenter for today. So our last presenter will examine the factors affecting family planning access for women in disaster-affected areas. She is the Executive Director of the Center for Strategic Research, Creativity, and Intellectual Property of Miriam College. She also teaches at the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance, or NCPAG, specializing in organization studies, leadership in the public sector, HR management, and Philippine administrative system. She earned her master's in demography from UP's Population Institute and her PhD in public administration from UP Diliman. Let us all give a warm welcome to Dr. Maria Carmen V. Peñalosa. Good morning, ma'am.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Okay, so after hearing presentations that more or less paint a picture of the macroeconomic, socio political environment, utilizing quite a number of secondary data, my presentation will be really different because I will be zooming on a research which we did in 2022, which is essentially qualitative, exploratory. And so we will be looking at 4 areas in the country where primary data was gathered. So I will present to you primary data, essentially, of course, with a number of analysis. So the research is about non-health determinants of family planning use among women and disasters. So I listed there my team members. This was quite a big project. We had to select barangays from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. And so it involved primary data, as I mentioned. Okay, so the Philippines, as you probably know, ranks 8th most at-risk country for disasters. No, that's about the time when we did the research that we had. In fact, from the 3rd most at risk in or among 171 countries in 2017, it's 8 out of 181 countries in 2021, and that index really is a indicator, a composite indicator, which is a calculation of the disaster risk that the country faces following our exposure to earthquakes, storms, floods, drought, and sea level rise. It also includes susceptibility, and overall situation of society in terms of how we are able to adapt our capacities and cope. So you have governance as part of the composite of indicators. Okay. So since this is primary data, I'll be presenting quite a number of data. Actually, I see Zik, requested me to really put my data into 25 slides, and it was really a challenge because primary nga siya, and so you will see a lot of, this might be heavy text, but please bear with me. Okay, so, and then I will try to, limit the time I spend on the slides. But, I understand that this is recorded, so you can easily refer, no, to the slides if you wish. Okay, so our being exposed, prone to hazards is largely due to our geographical context, as you know, our location within the ring of fire between the Eurasian and Pacific tectonic plates. You have here data from NDRRMC, no? Classifying the hazards and risks in the Philippines as essentially either typhoons, floods and droughts, okay, storm surge threats, volcanic, earthquake, landslides, and the human, induced disasters. In 2017, in fact, estimated cost of disaster per year is 85 to 422 billion. From the period of 2010 to 2019, it's about 463 billion pesos, no, in terms of damages due to only natural extreme events and disasters. And so you know, no, that in terms of the number of families and individuals affected by disasters, that's about 12.1 million per year, no? That's NDRRMC data. Okay, so across countries, you have this picture of the country, the Philippines, being prone to disasters, both, well, essentially natural, but we also have man-made. And we know from discussion papers by the UNDP that the globe over, across countries, women and girls, people in rural areas, those in indigenous communities, ethnic, linguistic minorities, those who have disabilities, migrant communities, gender, sexual minorities, youth, and older persons are usually those who are disproportionately left behind, in the development process. So given all of these, we were engaged by the Philippine Society for Responsible Parenthood, and with funding from the United Nations Population Fund, we were tasked to do a study inquiring into the non-health determinants, okay, in reference to the UN Leave No One Behind framework, particularly of family planning use among women and girls during disasters, and determine how family planning impact their lives. So what we did was to purposefully select 5 barangays or sites, well, representing Luzon, okay, so you have Calabarzon, and then Visayas, or not really representing, but in these areas, Eastern Visayas region, Caraga and Barm. Now, those that are most prone and vulnerable to calamities and natural and man-made disasters. So we pre-selected the barangays within the municipalities of Batangas, Eastern Samar, Surigao del Norte, and Lanao del Sur. So the research is divided into 2. I will just present one. No? So the first part really looked at how the 5 key factors of LNOB, no? Discrimination, geography, governance, and socioeconomic status, plus shock and fragility, shape the experience of people in these areas. So there are quite a number of narrations. So very interesting, but we will skip that and go directly to exploring, no? And diving into information about how the respondents in the FGD, 107 of them, no, how their what their values, perception, belief, opinions, and practices are on family planning use, in order to identify those non-health only, no, non-health related factors that influence their choices and decisions, particularly during times of disaster. Okay, the study employed a qualitative, as I said already, no, qualitative exploratory research design, collecting data from 23 key informant interviews and 107 focus group discussions. So the initial inclusion criteria was guided by the LNOB framework for the selection of the provinces. And then the primary consideration for determining inclusion was not just because they are most recently affected by calamities or regularly confronted with natural and man-made disasters, but they belong to lower income municipalities, no? Meaning to say that the financial resources available to their communities are very limited, to the local government unit, very limited, and so their ability, no, to deliver on programs and development projects are limited as well. Now, within these municipalities, we coordinated with the local, we had local coordinators in the person of the municipal health officials. So they are there, no? And with their help, also using the LNOB factors, we were able to identify the barangays that they consider as the most left behind. So yung pinakamahirap, yung pinaka-exposed sa disaster. No, but we had the condition that the barangays are accessible to the team, no, via transportation, would not compromise personal safety and security of the research team. Okay, so this is what we came up with. So Agoncillo, incidence is the highest in Marawi. Of course, in terms of the classification, we took very we focused as well, no, as I mentioned earlier, on the how prone, no, these areas are, no, and within these areas, using the help of the local BHUs, no, RHUs, we were able to identify these sites. So in Agoncillo, we had 2 barangays, Banyaga and Bilibinwang. So most susceptible to volcanic tsunami, prone to base surge, ballistic projectiles. So you have it there, you know, typhoon slides and flooding. In Cambante, Mercedes, Eastern Samar, one of the heaviest hit, no, during the Yolanda typhoon. So low susceptibility to high flood, no, you have Barangay Katangman, which is very susceptible to very high flood, okay, low landslide susceptibility, but there's a tsunami hazard of 5 to 6 meters, no, in the area. And in Marawi, of course, we all know this, no? While they do have trace of potentially active fault, we chose Marawi essentially because of the siege, the man-made disaster. So just to show you some pictures, so we were here, no, in that area. So about 4 to 5 kilometers within the danger zone. Okay, and this is Mercedes. So this is a coastal, no, community. Okay, and okay, Siargao, which is an island, no, community. So the one with the orange dot there, and a line, no, a red line is where we went, where our team went. And then of course the Marawi siege. Okay, so just to give you a very brief profile of the communities we went to. In terms of population and housing data, no, of 2020, at that time that was the only one available to us. Okay, so Barangay Bilimbinwang and Banyaga are the largest, followed by Barangay Katangnan in General Luna and Sagongsongan in Marawi, which had only 800, no, compared to 2,886, 2,668, no, in Agoncillo. Yeah, the smallest barangay, Mercedes, with a population of only, with a population of only 276, no, and yeah, household population of 285 and number of households 80. Okay, so in terms of population distribution by sex, in barangays Cambante, Mercedes, and Sagunson, distribution is almost equal. No, it's actually equal. 400, 400, 138, 138. So we were a bit curious how it could, you know, exactly have that kind of distribution, but equal distribution. In General Luna, slightly more males as against females, and yeah, the biggest proportion of female to male can be found in Bilibinwang. Okay, yeah. So there is high reproductive capacity in the areas that we went to, because as you see, 51 to 56% were of females in the area were of reproductive age. Okay, now let's look at the respondents. So yeah, 107 FGD respondents, the highest of which is General Luna. We could not do anything about that. No, we did not intend 36, pero dinumog kami eh. Kasi we came right after the disaster, and people thought that we were from DSWD, distributing ayuda. And so while we were trying to ask them to go away, talagang hindi namin kinaya, no? Okay, so yeah, that's disproportionately high, 36. So you have 29 from Marawi. Again, there were also people who wanted to be part of that. The team could not, nahirapan talagang magbawas, no? Nagbawas na sila dyan, no? Kasi yung pinuntahan namin na evacuation site was also very terrible. And I think they thought that we will be giving ayuda as well. So kaya, but we did give, no, pamasahe. I think, which is hindi naman siya unacceptable, no? Pagkatapos mong abalahin, nagbigay kami ng pamasahe. Okay, sige. So participants' mean age is 32. Okay. Participants from Agoncillo Mercedes are the ones who are younger. Those in Marawi and to 31 age. So respondents either have at least a school diploma or have finished a technical vocational course. So that's really the trend, no? But Agoncillo appears to be where the most educated women are those with high school diploma, falling at 57 to 14%. We were only able to capture one woman with a college degree, one in Agoncillo and one in General Luna, where this is very interesting, no? In Marawi, there were 8 women who were college graduates, and there were 5 with at least who was able to at least reach college. But later you'll find out that in terms of decision-making, spousal, family relations, these women are the ones who have very little control, very little say, in how family planning use is determined. So they belong to the predominant ethnic group. Predominantly Catholic. Siguro I'll just skip this. Okay, yeah, but this one is important. 90 to 48% of women use modern contraceptive methods, those in Batangas, okay? In fact, across these areas, pills and injectables are the most popular, okay? So at least 57 to 0.14 in Mercedes and in General Luna as well, use modern contraceptive methods. Unfortunately, there's a high NA response in the 2, in Mercedes, General Luna, 3, and Marawi. So medyo tayo dito sa data na to. Okay, so in terms of contraceptive use, at least 49 of women between 15 to 30 use modern family planning methods as compared to those of later age category. I mentioned the pills, okay? And so while the pills and the injectables are free, it's not provided to them regularly. So the cost of commodities rests on the women themselves in times when they are not provided with the commodities. And they have to bear the cost out-of-pocket expense, which is between 50 to 200 pesos per pill. Yeah, per pill. And I'm not sure if that includes also the injectables. The data on FP method by education attainment show that women who have at least reached elementary education use pills. Okay, so parang importante yung elementary, at least elementary education. That's true for the 3 barangays, but not for Marawi. Okay, yeah. According to the participants, no one in their communities use vasectomy as method of contraception. All right, so let's go to the non-health determinants of family planning. Isa-isahin natin, no? It appears that in Agoncillo, Batangas, sociocultural factors and contraceptive-related considerations tend to discourage and prevent the use of FP. And these are mainly because, Children are important. Children are central to the family. So if FP prevents children, then the tendency is for you not to use family planning. Okay, and there's a sect also in the area where it's not consistent with the religious belief, but they say it's only a very small sect. In terms of contraceptive methods, perception of the pill affects use. Okay, hindi hiyang, sumasakit ang ulo, hindi nireregla. And this one cuts across all of the areas. Fear of the needle. Tatakot sila sa needle. Okay, but very strong are facilitating factors. And so you see here, women said that in terms of social factors, they are encouraged to use FP because they aspire for maginhawang buhay. They feel pressure, family, relatives, neighbors, tell them to use family planning, tell them to use pills. Well, female-centric FP use. The men do not use any family planning method. It's the women. So yun pa rin, babae. But very interesting, and I guess this is borne out by many of the research in history, of course, sociology, that goes down to rural areas. Family planning use is, in terms of spousal relations and decision-making dynamics, is dominated by the female. Okay, so this is a common response across three. Batangas, Samar, Mercedes, and yung Surigao. In terms of a facilitating factor is also fertility-related reasons, the desire to delay or limit spaced pregnancy. Meron din yung hinahabol, yung babae, lalaki, anak, hinahabol nila. So kaya mahaba. Okay, but you'll see that again, well, on the other hand, the pill is also considered to have very positive side effects. Gumaganda ang kutis, yung mga payat gustong magpataba, nagpipills, madaling gamitin, parang maintenance. Okay? But very important also is access. So in all of the barangays, but particularly Agoncillo, pills are given for free. They are distributed in evacuation sites, okay, although not consistently and not regularly. Access to FP information and counseling is there, very strong. In fact, they have a chat group. Women are, given follow-ups. They are informed. FP commodities are delivered to their homes. Okay, and a lot of women in this area feel that economic cost of childbirth and child rearing, including overall cost of living, is a factor for them to use FP. So you will see that in Mercedes, halos ganun din. Okay? Female-dominated, high importance, maginhawang buhay, fertility-related. So you'll see, more or less the same facilitating factors, the same inhibiting factors as well. Okay? In general, Luna, okay, very weak yung fear of the side effects of FP. So kahit masakit yung ulo, they're spotting, pills is very expensive, it doesn't matter, they still use contraceptive methods. So the same female-centric, female-dominated, social pressure, okay. But here it's very interesting. During the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown, hindi sila nakakalabas, walang follow-up, tumaas yung birth rate. Okay? So ang input nila, wala kasing ginagawa. Tapos nandun lang sila, hindi makalabas, hindi makabili ng pills. Okay? So we have to think about that. Of course, in the case of Surigao, dahil talagang nilubog sila halos, like Mercedes as well, damaged records. Yung mga records nila, so pills got expired. Okay? Yeah, so halos parehas din, not much, difference. Okay, except let's go to Marawi now. To Marawi, this is a different case, so factors that tend to encourage, they're all very weak, very, very weak. I'm not going to go through that, but in fact, hindi yan gumagana. The inhibiting factors really are because women want more children. We have respondents as many as 12, 11, 8. Okay, so they want many children. There is religious conservatism. If you don't have children, you are shamed. if you use pills, you are called promiscuous, and it's seen as a way to control the population of the Muslims. No? So they don't want that. This is the only site where we found that spousal relations and decision making is really male dominated. No? Community, all the rest are very weak. Budget is something that we really have to discuss. Yeah, and the threat of organizational effectiveness as a result of devolving Department of Health workers. No? Andun pa rin siya yung issue na yun. We know dapat last year nagsimula na yung according to the Mandanas ruling, but hindi pa rin siya, no? Hindi pa rin nangyayari, right? Okay. And we have very specific recommendations for Marawi kasi yun talaga yung problematic. Okay, we are saying that they should consider advocating for the implementation of the IRR on the anti-child marriage law. Okay, and of course, discuss the implications of the Muslim Haram on family planning. Siguro 1 or 2 na lang from the local government. Disaster response should invest on necessary information, communications, and transportation technologies. Because we noticed that pagka nagkakaroon ng disaster, nasisira yung kanilang mga records. Nawawalan sila ng data. No? They have to build and rebuild the infrastructure again, no? Information communication. Yeah, and they may want to capitalize on technology-enabled data management systems kasi yung kanilang work very well, yung kanilang chat group. Okay, for follow-ups especially. All right, but yeah, so there are a lot. You can go through them on your own time. But to emphasize, municipal or city health offices should address the fear of needles in general for these areas, and the inclusion of males in FP campaign and use by correcting misconceptions about vasectomy. Yun, so that ends my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you po. Ayan, thank you. Let's go ahead to the open forum, especially that we've been receiving na rin comments and questions from online, no? Online. Pero as they're setting up for the open forum, we'd like to remind everyone that we have coffee available po sa likod. So please get na lang po, feel free. And then, ayan, again, as they're setting up, siguro I'll introduce na lang po yung moderator natin, no? Ayan, so now is the time to address the questions related to the 3 presentations. So everyone here on site, we also invite you to please, meron kaming available na microphones po for you to puntahan. Yan. Sige po. So our moderator for today is a seasoned advocate of media and information literacy, or MIL, with 20 years of strategic communication experience in the development sector. She has led public information campaigns and trained government communicators in communication planning, crisis communication, and journalism. She is also a co-founder of a regional network of MIL advocates supporting ASEAN teachers in integrating media literacy into curricula to promote critical thinking and informed citizenship. Previously from the Philippine Council for Agriculture and Fisheries, she now leads as the Department Manager of the PIDS Research Information Department, or RID, and now is the Project Director po of the Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines. Let's give a round of applause to Ma'am Melinda. Good morning, ma'am. Okay. Our presenters as well po to occupy po dito yung seats sa front.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this very important discussion on empowering women and closing the gender gap in the Philippines. So as introduced, Thank you, Ms. Janina. I'm Melinda Quinones, and it's my honor po to serve you as moderator for today's forum. Ayan. So our discussion today brings together our experts and whose research and advocacy shine and a light on critical issues affecting women in the Philippines. Ano, napaka-interesting po ng topic today. And we have explored key themes, no? These are not just academic, but they have real implications to policies, programs, and grassroots advocacy. So more importantly, they challenge us to rethink how we can work together, collaboratively across sectors, institutions, and communities to drive meaningful change for women in the country. So we encourage everyone to ask questions, contribute to the discussion, and our team is monitoring our comment sections through Zoom, PIDS, and SERP-P Facebook pages. So with that, let us begin po. So meron po tayong question from Zoom. From Ms. Claire Luxon of ADB to Dr. Connie. We have the microphone there. Yeah. This is addressed to Dr. Connie. Are pay disparities solely due to sex or civil status? Or do they also result from factors like working part-time or missing out on promotions to higher paying roles? May ano pa siya? May epekto po ba siya?
Just wanted to clarify, the numbers that we've shown are actually not based on causation. It's not even based on correlation. So it's just a simple graph that says that it's just descriptive. Yes, it's just a summary.
Yeah.
So that is the caveat of the presentation. But if the question has something to do with are these the only factors that would determine the gap, then the answer should be resounding no. No, it should not be the only factors. No, not only the being single or married or being men or women. There are other factors that are not captured by one. Let's say we're using LFS to determine the gap. These are on one side of the equation only. Like one side in the sense that we are not capturing the firm side of things, which are very important when it comes to taking note of, because wages has something to do with productivity. And productivity is not captured in any of the standard data sets that we have like LFS. So yes, no, my answer to the question is no. Those are not the sole. There are more, and I would say that the things that we presented or any other things that are written out there should be, kumbaga, taken with a grain of salt in the sense that we always have to be mindful what are the samples, what are the methodologies, what is the population that I'm using, things like that.
Right. So more on descriptive. So we need more data to answer this question, more sampling population. Is that it? All right. So the next question naman, I would like to read from John Adrian Edulian, Managing Editor of Ang Amihan. This is addressed to Dr. Peñalosa. If leadership is about vision, wisdom, and strength, why are women still seen as less capable despite their proven competence and impact? How can we overcome biases shaped by culture, media, and history to ensure women are valued and elected based on merit? Medyo malalim po ito. I think this is addressed to Dr. Franco. Check.
Yeah. So the question is how to overcome bias?
Yes, shaped by culture, media, and history with regard to the, being capable.
That's a good question. But there are two sides to the problem. You can look at it from the demand say that usually takes a long time. But then that's why there are proposals that I recommended that has something to do with the electoral design, so that we normalize having more women in politics, like gender quotas, addressing the weakness of our political parties, gender funding, alongside with, of course, promotion and awareness of the important roles that women play and should play in decision-making spheres.
Yan. So right now po kasi napaka-madaling i-demonize ang women when it comes to leadership roles. Ano? Madali silang i-attack personally because of them being women. Sige po, si Dr. Peñalosa, if you want to answer po.
Yeah, so just to add my thoughts to that. So how to overcome biases, no, shaped by history, culture. Well, for one, I think we need to gather more primary data. We need to do more research, no, that, brings us to the ground, surfaces, culture, because we're talking about beliefs, value systems, no. The better that we go out of Metro Manila, I think the more that we will be able to siguro arrive at a better understanding of how women and men, no, in rural areas see, no, the gender. So that's one. And then education is very important, not to correct many of the misconceptions about women, no, and men. Yeah, particularly history. I think we can, not I think, I know we can capitalize on our Austronesian heritage, no, where women in early Filipino societies are really very strong. Okay, they were advisors to datus. They were how do you call this, leaders, no, in practically every aspect of society. They also were soldiers, no, warriors. Okay, so there is something, I think, no, that we should do in terms of our educational system, no, exploring our heritage as a Filipino, as Filipinos, and from there, no, look at what we can use to, reinforce that kind of value and appreciation for women's roles. But I do acknowledge the fact that as a result of our colonial experience, with the patriarchal system creeping into our society following the Spanish and then eventually the American colonial rule, that is something that we can also not deny, right? So on the one hand, there may be also studies that need to correct problems in that area, but I think it will help if we do a lot more of primary data in culture and look at our Austronesian heritage.
Malayo pa, pero at least we are moving forward to that. There are a lot of researches that conducted, pero kailangan pa nating dagdagan, especially in terms of generating it from the data. Okay, if you have questions po, our participants here online, on site, sige, please state your name and your organization, ma'am.
Speakers, ibabalik ko to sa inyo. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the insightful presentations. I would like to ask all of you, what's your reaction on this seeming growing antagonism toward wokeness, meaning yung being concerned about social injustice, discrimination, and that includes the issues that you talk about, the gender-related issues that you talk about. That's particularly happening in the US. And as you know, it's only a matter of time before, cultural counter revolutions like this na have adverse impacts, no. It's only a matter of time before this would reach developing countries like the Philippines, no, and it could have impacts on the public's perception and appreciation of the positive policies that we are pushing for. So what do you think, what do you think we should do right now? How can we better prepare for this? And are various stakeholders aware of this based on your, scoping of the landscape in your sphere of influence and the research area? Thank you. I forgot to state my name. You asked me. I'm Adora Navarro of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies.
Sige po, isa-isa po tayo magsagot. Let's start with Dr. Connie po.
Hello. Medyo mahirap sagutin yung tanong kasi ako personally, I think it should be, it should be celebrated. You know, pushing for something like this is something that should be celebrated. Um, uh, but there's a pushback. In the US, I think the pushback is coming from yung parang merong emergence ng idea of American first, yung MAGA. Diba? They have this MAGA, Make America Great Again, and everything is for the Americans. So bring back the jobs to the American people. So parang meron silang, yung different kind of, or different type of nationalism. And that's syempre kapag woke ang pinag-usapan, this has something to do with gender, inclusivity, di ba? And when you're inclusive, nandyan yung mga ibang lahi, and so parang it goes against the MAGA, which is very popular. That's why Trump won 2 times, di ba? Nanalo siya the first time against Clinton and then against Harris, and he was always pushing for this MAGA thing, and then so if I'm not so sure kasi hindi ako familiar sa sa social media, so I don't have a social media account, so I don't know what's going on there, if there's a woke kumbaga parang meron na bang is it being popular in the Philippine culture or not. But I think that one way for us to fight this kind of information is also using information, no? So kailangan lang yung people, we responsible users tayo ng social media, and what we think are right, na that should be something that should be celebrated, and that should not be pushed back, then we fight. I think that's one way, which is very that kind of it's funny because that kind of kumbaga parang solution or recommendation coming from somebody who's not in the social media. but that is one thing that I think that young people, like most of us here online, can do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Connie. Dr. Jane?
Yeah, I like the question, but yeah, I'm not sure if I can respond to it adequately, but what I can say is that sometimes there are also groups or far-right groups, far-right politicians in certain parts of Europe that also use gender equality to their advantage. Like, for instance, they're saying that we can. Yes, yeah, in a distorted version, no? Like we cannot have migrants because they rape our women or something like that. So yeah, it cuts both ways. But to the extent that wokeness has become othered, no? In a other siya, parang di ka cool if you are super woke. And that tells us something, that there are probably demands that these people, or those who believe, supporters of far-right Trump supporters, have not been met. And that's why they're like that. For instance, and that also has something to do with gender. For instance, in the US, they say that a lot of men supported Trump mainly because these are breadwinners whose incomes were lost or minimized due to the influx of immigrants in their areas, and therefore their sort of breadwinner personas have become affected. That's why far-right macho rhetoric has become or has resonated with them. So that's another explanation. No, there is also the explanation of why certain types of women are also hailed into the discourse of anti-women rhetoric of the far right, mainly because that's part of the patriarchal bargain. You give us a good economy, you give us jobs. We don't care whether you protect our borders. We don't care whether you sort of not necessarily support gender equality. You get what I mean? So women are also complicit to patriarchy. And that is also the explanation of why, for instance, women as voters do not necessarily vote for women candidates. Women also laugh at rape jokes. And that's the explanation. It's okay to kill small-time drug pushers for as long as you keep our community safe. You keep my children safe, no? And that's very commonsensical for most women, no? So siguro yun, no? And that's where probably the anti-wokeness is also coming from.
Thank you, Dr. Jean. Dr.
Yeah.
Peñalosa.
Yung problema sa Amerika, no? Grabe, no? And I think much of the pushback on wokeness comes from extreme wokeness. If you look into some of the discussions coming from conservative Republicans, they would use as an excuse, no? Transgender, going into women's sports. So that's one of the arguments that they would use. Or for example, the difficulty of having to address yung pronouns, So their pushbacks come from very specific instances, I think, where these conservative Americans feel that wokeness is taken to the extreme. Also, there's also the idea that, children who may actually be, or solutions to children's identity problems may in fact lie in psychology rather than, in medical procedures that allow them to transition at very early ages. So I think that's where much of the pushback in the States is coming from. And of course, MAGA, that's true, no? That racist, we can call them, no, by a lot of names, but it's really centered on the white, American first policy that Trump now is, and his party is pushing for. So I think insofar as that is concerned in America, dialogue is very important. And to the extent that we are open to the impact of, developments in America, one very important approach, I think, to that is also, providing safety nets for those who may be affected, right? And also opening up dialogues. Kasi I understand that we may not all agree, to have transgender in women's sports. We may not all agree to allow our children, as early as maybe 12 or 10 to transition, right? So continuing dialogue, I think, is very important. And then again, I go back to education, which is very critical to my mind, because then we talk about gender equality. There are many Filipino cultural values, many values, that I think we can leverage, to bridge this gap. On the one hand, of course, yung idea natin ng pantay sa pagkatao. Pantay sa pagkatao, lalaki, babae, bata, matanda, so there's been no discrimination. But I hardly hear that, in any of our lessons, even in the social sciences. Pantay sa pagkatao as a value, baka mas maganda nga to uphold also in government, so that those who are in higher positions, do not rule with impunity. To the disadvantage of those who are marginalized. Yung kapwa, there are quite a number of studies in Psikolohiyang Filipino that if we, invoke kapwa, then that brings us closer to the other person and, allows us to open our eyes and be more accepting, right, of differences. Yeah, the problem is very complicated. But I go back again to education and, leveraging culture and historical heritage as a way to solving a very fundamental problem. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Sige.
Particularly, kasi nga there's this danger that it would reach Philippine shores, no? And I like that idea na we use psikolohiyang Pilipino na pantay-pantay ang tao and also pakikipagkapwa tao. I like that idea.
Thank you. Napaka-insightful ng mga answers po ng ating mga resource person. Meron pa po tayong, okay lang po, dalawang questions pa. No? This is addressed to Dr. Franco, no? Related to dun sa wokeness kanina in political participation. How would you respond naman to the criticism that pushing for a gender quota or a certain percentage of women in political positions can lead to a selection that is not really based on merit, and that it actually results in artificial representation rather than genuine political engagement?
Hello? Oh, yeah. That's why, along with proposals to have a gender quota, there must be parallel efforts to strengthen political parties so that parties are stronger than the personalities or the dynasties within it. Pwede siguro, for instance, na hindi pwedeng kakatayo lang ng political party last year, pwede nang tumakbo. Dapat merong 3 to 4 years man lang, and then meron kang certain amount of membership all over the country. And meron ka man lang training, may activities. Hindi yung pag hindi na eleksyon, wala ka ng website or hindi mo nga alam kung nasa ng opisina, no? Yung gano'n, no? And of course, when we say we want more women in politics, we're not just saying that it should be any woman, no? Kasi titingnan mo rin. So siguro in legislating for a gender quota or encouraging more women in the candidate slates of political parties, pwede kasing sabihin mo non-dynastic yung, pwede kang mag-stipulate dun non-dynastic. Ayan, mga taga-Senate, non-dynastic, tapos pwedeng from a group that do not have resources, pwede mo namang stipulate Kasi in gender or in feminist politics or in feminist analysis, there is also a thing as intersectionality, that gender cuts across other categories such as race, ethnicity, and what you call this, age, economic class. So yun yung pwedeng i-invoke when we legislate on gender quota, para hindi rin malalagyan lang ng baka panay coming from political families lang na meron ng advantage, so to speak, in the first place.
Na-mention mo, ma'am, at sundutan ko lang, na-mention mo kanina yung tungkol sa party list system in the Philippines. And we have noticed a lot of party lists that they do not really represent the sector that they so-called are representing or should be representing. What specific strategy po kaya in terms of gender mainstreaming in politics can you recommend para naman yung totoong representative for women ang maisusulong natin ng mga polisiya? Yung mga ganun.
Oo. Ang pwede kasi like yung ngayon zebra na pag women, men, women muna. Kung mag-nominate ng 3, laging una yung women. No? Again, ang pwede in certain countries may nag-i-invoke na, isn't that a class legislation? Hindi. Kasi pwede rin namang, the ano is equity. No, na talagang overwhelming yung dominance ng men sa politics So kailangan ng lagyan ng hagdanan, kumbaga, to equalize the opportunities for women. And then dapat yung party, whether it's traditional or for party list, yun nga, dapat meron pa man lang tinatawag na kung may residency required sa mga individual candidates. Meron din yung party na hindi yung natulog ka pagkagising, ay tatakbo ako dito, tatakbo ako, magkikreate ako ng party. At saka laughable. Laughable yung mga party list names, no? Oo. And then, merong, for instance, I sat in a forum then where there's a parang quantitative analysis of the electoral results in 2022. May mga microdata sila, and there are party list groups who won on the basis of the votes coming from a certain territorial area. which actually defeats yung intention ng party list na dapat sector ang bumoboto. On the one hand, you can say that, may chance pala, konti lang. But on the other hand, I have a suspicion that these party lists who won in certain territorial areas are actually from political dynasties. Because hindi pa nagkasya dun sa, ay, teka muna, nanay, anak, pamangkin, ay, meron pang espasyo political party, dito na lang magkampanya. Yeah, and it's also laughable na parang ang nangyayari, hindi nagkasya sa politika. At saka alam mo ba sa party list, maraming women. Yun din ang nagiging entry point. So it's parang unfortunate that the entry level of women in politics come from dysfunctional features of our political system, no? So yun nga yung at saka yun nga, while we always say that yung 2 women presidents that we've had, we always say na we're okay compared to our neighbors, but then these 2 women came into power under circumstances that have been contested, no? So yun yung pwedeng nuanced view about it. Yung sa party list din kasi, ang nangyayari, parang naging additional political space siya, no? For well-resourced families, popular families. So, yun yung dapat talaga sigurong ma-regulate. Again, if party list is put to good use, yung party list system, tingin ko tingin ko viable siya. But it should be, I think, regulated and rethought. No, thank you.
Thank you so much. Mainit na discussion yun, Doc Jean. We have another one, last one, from our Vice President, kay VP Peng. Sabi niya, this is addressed to Dr. Connie, are women really forced to do housework, or is it an issue of low wages, high cost of education, housing, care, work that are making women or even men to stay at home? Dr. Connie?
Not really forced, BP Peng. I would like to think that they are not forced, but medyo mahirap sagutin pala. Sandali lang ha, I have to organize my thoughts. If by forced, we refer to it as something that is assigned to us by social norms and gender roles, then perhaps we are forced. Siguro that would be the more diplomatic way of putting it. But of course, when I say this from my personal experience, because I didn't work for 1 year and nobody told me not to work. So in that sense, I was not forced. So it was me who forced myself to do it because I have my kid and I want my kid to grow supervised and things like that. So kumbaga, nobody from outside had forced me to do it. I assigned myself to do it. So, but yun nga, kasi there are complex issues that are discussed by the other discussants today. Social norms, gender roles, and these are things that are very difficult to overcome. So hindi siya talaga puwersahan sa usapang puwersahan, pero yun nga, parang ikaw mismo sa sarili mo as a mother, as a parent, maybe that's where I don't know, that's where the push is coming from.
May answer din po si Dr. Sige pa.
So just to share my thoughts,
Yes.
so in 2015, my thesis was on women's fertility and its effect, something like this. I can't remember the exact title, no, but its effect on women's place of work. So, so the higher the fertility, the more children a woman has, the more likely that she is to work in places or in forms of work that allow her to juggle between home and work. So in the informal sector, where she's able to navigate spaces. And in that research, I found that it's not forced. Again, it's sociocultural, no? Um, I don't know if you think it's unfortunate that our culture puts a premium on children. Pero sa atin kasi mahalaga ang anak, no? We go down the social ladder and you will see that, no? Lalo na in the rural areas. So it's not really a choice of not having children and working. But it seems to me at that time as a choice between, how can you find work that is complementary to, having a child. So that was, kaya nga ang result, multiple role burdens. That's how I labeled it in the thesis. They are, facing multiple role burdens. And yet while I label it as burden, to them it did not appear as burden. To them, it appeared as, doing what they should do a responsibility to supplement the failings of the husband. Something like that. I can't remember the exact words I used. Because men are, generally expected to take care of, expenses and everything. I'm sorry, it came from a research. Okay. So yun, no, yung supplementarity of, a complementarity of roles, and a self-imposed, I guess, a self-imposed mindset, that makes you not really not want to have children, but to find a way where you can put career and children together. So mahirap yun, no, sa mga babae, I can imagine. Those who want to take it easy, delay and limit or, not have children altogether. And that's fine because that's a choice, right? And that we know in Western societies, children are opportunity costs. I keep telling my students who are, sometimes very, I feel very insensitive to their mothers. I would tell them, do you know how much money your mother lost spending on you when she could have spent it on? Diba? That's true, eh? That's an opportunity cost. Or the time that she could have spent with her friends, doing the things she loves, traveling, and you're in a way,
Walang monetary value.
Yeah. That's
not
it. That's the point.
computed.
So they don't recognize. Oo. So yeah, I think that is an area that we really have to study more, and to see how, that places into our current concerns about gender equality, women's labor participation. Yeah, I boil down to education. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carmen. Dr.
If I
Jean?
may add, no, tama si Dr. Dacuycuy, it's really difficult to respond to that, and because these are choices that are made by women in a society that valorizes motherhood as some form of sacrifice. Mahirap yun eh. On the one hand, laging butihing ina. Laging ganon. That is Inday Badida, hindi nyo nakilala. Laging ganon. Butihing ina ni ganyan. No? Laging may ganong, siya, adjective. But then, yun ang pag-valorize. But on the other hand, pag may batang napulot somewhere sa CR ng isang ang laging biniblame, nasa ng nanay. Pero hindi ba ang tatay din may kasalanan? So yung ganon, and then yung pag sinasabing pag women are working very successful, it's very common to ask that woman, how do you balance work and family? That's not a question that you should that's not a question that is asked of men. 'Di ba? Yung balancing. So parang default na ang babae taga-balance, ang lalaki talagang focus lang sa work. So yung choice yung under what conditions was the choice to stay at home or made? So I think the task of the government is to provide opportunities such that yung choice na yon is made with an informed choice. No, hindi yung wala ka na kasing choice, no? So dapat nga yung ideally maganda yung mga daycare centers, companies should be incentivized to provide leave benefits to both men and women, no? Kasi kailangan we should also talk to men. Baka naman gusto na nilang mag-take on ng more household chores. Kaya lang even even critical ako sa even yung mga women's groups na ang mga training nila lagi lang babae, dapat lalaki din, no? And in government programs din, no, that sometimes even sanction yung unpaid work like livelihood programs, i-showcase nila, pero sari-sari store. sari-sari store, informal work yun eh. Lalo na kung wala kang, ano, tsaka kakainin nyo na lang yung ano doon, tapos pwede mong gawin yun while tending to your children. So grabe yung burden.
Thank you so much. I want to express my deepest gratitude to our speakers and researchers. My question, are we allowed to entertain one question? Okay, just one more.
The only man from the...
Ilan lang po yung lalaki sa room.
Hello.
Sige.
Yes, good morning po. Thank you po sa presentation. Well, kasi binanggit ni Dr. Jean ng taga-Senate. Anyway, just a comment lang dun sa logo ay ang nasa so happy that we have taken note of the senators, 7 senators from the 19th Congress who are there. But for a bicameral setup of the country, sana may mga women legislators from the House of Representatives din dyan para at least hindi unfair. Kasi lalo na if you're looking forward to passing legislation that would empower more women, especially yung binabanggit niyo on unpaid work. Kung if that would, we need the House of Representatives counterpart to be put that into a law. Anyway, my question, sorry nag-comment ako dyan. Thank you. Pero, yeah, I'm sorry sa sitapan from the Senate po, kasi binanggit ni Dr. Jean. Yeah, ang isang ano ko doon, so in effect, yung women don't have black voting, so to speak, a women's vote, to put in more women in politics or in governance. In that regard, the question of education, whether they are having that empowerment to put more women. On the next question is regarding the figures that was presented earlier that kinumpare yung 2017 to 2019. I don't, anong year yun na medyo mas marami. Ang gusto ko lang malaman whether was there with the more women in legislative department or in governance, nagkaroon ba ng improvement more of laws na would give more equity or equality? Tapos, the third question naman is yung dami, sorry. Yung sa budgeting, we know that there's a God budget being provided. What has happened to it? Had not it been utilized in order to propel more empowerment for women and for equality, equity, and whatsoever? And last probably would be on the study on when a certain, I don't know whether on other countries, whether has there really been a more development when a women leader of a certain country is being compared to the previous men leaders of that country. Well, I don't know if we could do that in the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Nitafan. Yung with regard to women's vote, I think that's a very important question. And that's something that has not yet been studied. But do you know that there are slightly more women voters compared to men historically? But then we don't know about a women's vote because there have not been, the one way to know that is to have exit polls. Pero I think 2 or 3 electoral cycles na wala pa tayong exit polls because it's so expensive, no? But I do know, I was privy to a survey in the last elections that women did not go for the woman candidate in the presidential elections, and it's not very surprising. That's why my sense is that although periodically, di ba, lalo na ngayon ang dami ng survey firms, I'm advocating for survey firms to actually disaggregate the polls they present, not the poll results they present in their press releases, so that candidates are aware of how well they are faring with regard to the women's sector. Why? Because this will then incentivize them to actually churn out I mean, assuming na may substance yung platform nila, hindi after na na-elect sila, saka lang sila may platform. Ano, no? Yung gano'n, no? I mean, so that candidates will necessarily have to create platforms that would be pertaining to women. So yun yung maganda, no? Kasi pwede naman talagang sex disaggregate, pero kailangan mo pang pumunta doon sa polling firms tapos i-number crunch. Eh kung academic ka, hindi naman mababasa yung mga journal articles mo, 'di ba? So 'yon. Tapos with regard to the God budget is something that is very much praised by other countries around the world because it's something unique, I guess, in the Philippines. Meron na ring mga ibang sumunod na bansa such as I think Malaysia. Hindi ko alam kung alin pa yung iba. But then of course, it's still very much a work in progress because of yung attribution problems, yung medyo weak yung gender analysis by some government agencies. With regard to welfare, outcomes, yeah, this has already been studied in other countries, no? So that tells us that indeed in most countries around the world, but hindi siya causation. Hindi siya causation naman, no? Having more women in parliament is correlated with less corruption, with more budget for social welfare services, with more policies that accrue to better social welfare outcomes. So yun yung ano, but hindi siya causation. But we should also take note of what is called the glass cliff. Yung pagka may sakuna, merong trahedya, merong conflict, hindi maganda sa bansa, women yung tinitake on sa leadership role. Parang patibong, kumbaga. So medyo, para pag nag-fail, ibe-blame dahil babae siya. So may mga ganitong pag-intindi din. Salamat!
Thank you. Si Dr. Connie, Dr. Carmen, may additional insights po kayo?
Regards the question.
Yes po. Okay na.
Thank you.
Alright. Thank you. Alam ko po you have a lot of questions in mind. Very interesting po kasi yung topic natin at karamihan po na nandito sa room ay babae. Iilan lang po ang lalaki. Anyway, so thank you very much po sa ating mga speakers, researchers, no? So Dr. Connie BAYUDAN-DACUYCUY and Dr. Jean ENCINAS-FRANCO and Dr. Maria CARMEN PEÑALOSA for sharing your expertise and research and valuable insights with us today. So let's take today's discussion beyond this forum. Sana po pag-usapan natin into our communities, our workplaces, and advocacy efforts because as mentioned kanina ni Dr. Connie, change begins with awareness. Pag-usapan natin siya, but it has to be sustained through action. So I'm now turning over the microphone to Ms. Janina Sarmiento for the closing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ma'am Melinda. Thank you as well again to our panelists. So now, okay, sige, mag-round of applause po muna tayo lahat again. Thank you. So now we will be awarding our certificates of appreciation to our three presenters. Allow me to read the citation. So the Philippine Institute for Development Studies and the Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, or SERP-P, presents this certificate of appreciation to, first one goes to Dr. Jean S. ENCINAS-FRANCO for imparting her valuable insights as a speaker during the SERP-P Knowledge Sharing Forum on the theme Empowering Women and Closing the Gender Gap in the Philippines. Given this 27th day of March 2025 in Quezon City, Philippines, signed Dr. Aniceto C. Orbeta Jr., President of PIDS. The same certificate of appreciation is awarded to Dr. Maria Carmen V. Peñalosa. The same certificate is also awarded to Dr. CONNIE BAYUDAN-DACUYCUY.
You know what's new?
Once again, maraming salamat po sa inyong presentations po and for your valuable insights. And thank you again as well for the audience. But I'd like to remind everyone, magpipicture po tayo. But before I close po, let me announce po that we have selected actually raffle winners for today, which we regularly do for our events. So our winners today are, let me just announce, Carol Joyce Gatapia, Sir Cisnetafan, and Hannah Himala. This is just a small token of appreciation for your attendance and participation for today. Let's give a round of applause din po sa kanila. Maraming salamat. Okay, the PIDS team will hand you po yung tokens of appreciation din po namin. Now, we would like to remind everyone that the speakers' presentations will be available at the PIDS and SERP-P website. Meanwhile, everyone may also download a copy of this study from the link provided in the Zoom chat box and Facebook comment section. So nakita niyo po yung link. Please feel free to download the presentations of our speakers. And also, we'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on today's program. Please take a moment to fill out our feedback form available through the link in the Zoom chat box and the Facebook comment section. Your feedback and suggestions are valuable in helping us improve our future events. Please note that your e-certificate of participation will be sent automatically to your email after submitting the completed feedback form. Keep in touch with us as well. Ayan po. Please follow SERP-P on Facebook and LinkedIn for PIDS naman po. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter or X, and YouTube. Also, feel free to visit our websites for more studies and research and more information about our future events. We hope to have everyone again sa mga susunod po naming activities. So for our upcoming activities in April, meron po kami in April 10 and 24. So yan. Finally, we would like to thank our participants from the government and private sector, academe, civil society, and international development organizations. As we wrap up, let me echo Dr. Orbeta's reminder on his opening remarks that closing the gender gap isn't just a conversation we have every March. It's a continuous journey that demands action, effort, and commitment. So we've made progress, but there's still much work to be done. Again, I'm Janina Sarmiento, your host for today, and thank you po very much and have a great day ahead.